Okay, I want to continue with graphing the radical function. This is the one that we did last. So what I want to do now is this. We said the number out front affects the width of it, but it doesn't shift it. So this point right here does not get shifted at all. All right, what if the number in front is negative? Now remember, the number in front doesn't affect the graph shifting wise. So let's see what happens here. Remember, what's up under here has to be greater than or equal to 0. So your x value is going to start at 0. Then I'm going to pick 1. I'm not going to pick 2 or 3. You've heard me say that enough. I'll pick 4. But watch what happens now. If I let x be 0, 0 square root of 0 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Let x be 1. Square root of 1 is 1. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Let x be 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Watch what happens now. So what happens now, if this number in front is positive, it's always the upper half of the u. If the number in front of the radical is a negative number, even if it's just a negative, that would be negative 1. You're going to be looking at the bottom half of the u shape. So the number in front of this radical affects it in two ways. The bigger that number is, the wider it is. And if that number's negative, you're looking at the bottom half instead of the top half. All right, let's keep going. Okay. Now, is there just an x under this square root? No. So what does this mean? It means that this graph will be shifted 3 units right. So that means this then. Where normally your first number starts at 0, it's not going to be 0 now, it's going to start at 3. Then you can go to 4 if you want to, and so on. All right, let's plug in 3. What's 3 minus 3? 0. What's the square root of 0? 0. So see, when you plot this point, the graph starts right here now. So that's 3 units to the right. Now plug in 4. What's 4 minus 3? 1. What's the square root of 1? 1. Now, if that's all you want to plot, that is fine with me. But make sure when you draw the graph, make sure you bend it. It's not straight. Now, you could take some other numbers, 5 and 6, but that's not going to give you a whole number. But you can plug in 7, because 7 minus 3 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So remember, your parent graph looked like this. Don't copy this. That's what the parent graph looked like. It just shifted it 3 units to the right. Okay, let's do this one now. Be careful right here now. Remember the number under the radical with x. The number under here affects the graph this way, the opposite of it. The number that's on the outside affects it this way. Let me show you why. Let's make an XY chart. Is there any number under this square root? No. So that means your first number starts at 0. See, that minus 3 is not under there. It is up here. That's why it started at 3. But that minus 3 is not in there with that x, so it still starts at 0. All right, watch what happens. Plug in 0. What's the square root of 0? 0. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Now plug in 1. What's the square root of 1? 1. And 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Now watch what happens when you plot these. 0, negative 3 is right here. 1, negative 2 is right there. There's your graph. Now remember, what was the parent function? I'm just going to put it back up. So, what did this number right here do to your graph? It shifted all of your y's 3 units down. So this point goes to here. This point goes down 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now, if you want to just do the x values every time, you can. I just want you to be aware of what that does. All right, we're going to do a few more of these. Okay, it's not just an x in here. If it was just an x, you'd start at 0, but it's not. It's x plus 2 under there. So what does that mean? 2 to the left. So if you go 2 to the left of 0, so see, you're not starting at 0 anymore. You're starting at negative 2. 2 to the left. Now, what is this going to do? That's going to be shifted 3 up. So instead of your graph being right here, it's going to be 2 to the left and 3 up. Now you're going to see that as soon as we do this. All right, so let's plug in x, negative 2. Plug in negative 2. What's negative 2 plus 2? 0. What's the square root of 0? 0. But what is 0 plus 3? It's 3. Now, you have to go to the right of negative 2. You can't go to the left. So let's go one more to the right. See, I go 1 to whatever this number is, go 1 to the right of that. So this is negative 2, so go to negative 1. All right, let's plug it in. Negative 1 plus 2 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. And 1 plus 3 is 4. Now, let's draw that graph. Negative 2, 3 is here. Negative 1, 4 is there. And there's the shape. Now, let me draw the parent function back in. Is it the same shape? Yes, it's the exact same shape, but this point is shifted 2 to the left and 3 up, which I could tell you that by looking at this. Take the opposite of this, that's negative 2, and then that's going to be up that many. But you don't even have to remember this number. If you'll just remember what's the first number you got to put in here, and then you can plug this in to get that number right there. That's the main thing, is what's the first number in my chart. So if this is an x, this will always be 0. If this is an x plus a number, this will be a negative. If this is x minus a number, it'll be a positive. That's how you decide what number to put right here. Then the next number is always 1 bigger than this one. It's just another way of looking at it. Okay, so let's do one that's got all of it in it then. So let's do this one. Now, let's talk about a couple things before we do it. And you don't have to know every bit of what I'm about to tell you, but hopefully you are starting to pick up on it. All right, remember, this is a radical function. What does that mean? It's half of a u. Okay? What is this plus 5 in here with that x going to do? It's going to move it 5 to the left. What's the minus 3 going to do? It's going to move it 3 down. So this, 5 to the opposite of it, it's going to be 5 to the left, and that's going to move all of the y values down 3. So to the left 5 and down 3. Now what's this going to do? It's going to make it wider. And what's that going to do? It's going to be the bottom half of the u, not the top half. Now here's the good thing about it. You don't have to know any of what I just said to still graph this problem. If you do this, find the first number that goes in your XY chart. Okay. So if you didn't understand anything I just said, you can do this. If this was just the x, we'd start at 0. But it's not. It's x plus 5. So our first x value, we take the opposite of this. Now, if that had been an x minus 5, this would be a plus 5 right here. Now, that's the only number you need to know. All right, how do we get to the next number? You go one bigger than this, -4. That's all you need. Now, how do you find the y's that go with it? Put -5 in for x. -5 plus 5 is 0. Square root of 0 is 0. 0 times -2, you have to multiply first. 0 times -2 is still 0. And 0 minus 3 is -3. Now, think about what I just said. How do you plot this point? 5 to the left, opposite of that, and then 3 down. That's where your starting point is. Now plug in -4. -4 plus 5 is a positive 1. The square root of 1 is 1. And 1 times -2 is -2. And -2 minus 3 is -5. All right, so let's draw this graph. So -5, -3, is here. And then -4, -5 is to the left 4, down 5. And remember now, when you draw this, you got to remember it's half of a u. So start right here, come down through here, but bend it. Now, let me draw the original, my parent graph. That's what the regular one looked like. Okay, so what did it do to this point? It shifted this point 5 to the left and 3 down. And then this thing, the bottom half, because of the negative, and it's wider than this one. It doesn't turn as quick because that's a 2. If that was a 3, this thing would be even wider. If it was a 4, it'd be even wider. Now, it would still start right here. So that's how you graph the radical function. Now, we're fixing to make the exact same comments about the absolute value function. Okay, so let's look at that. You don't have to put this up. It's not like we haven't put it up enough already. Okay, this was the most basic of the radical functions, was this. So I graphed that for you first to show you the basic shape. Now, let's look at the most basic shape for the absolute value function. So I'm going to start out with just the x in here, like I did over here. So I'm going to start out with just the x. Okay, now let's make an XY chart. Okay, so I'm going to plug in 0, 1, and 2. So if I let x be 0, absolute value of 0 is 0. If I let x be 1, absolute value of 1 is 1. If I let x be 2, the absolute value of 2 is 2. Now here's one difference. The difference between a radical function and an absolute value function is this. Why could I not plug negative numbers in here? Because you can't get square roots of negative numbers. Now, can I get absolute values of negative numbers? Sure I can. So I can plug negative numbers in for this. So let's plug in a couple of negative numbers and see what happens. All right, so what's the absolute value of negative 1? Positive 1. What's the absolute value of negative 2? Positive 2. Now let's plot these 5 points and see what our parent graph looks like. 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, negative 1, 1, negative 2, 2. So if you look at this graph, it appears to be, sorry about that, and it is V-shaped. So, just like I said, you need to remember that a radical function is half of a u that goes right. It's either the upper half or the lower half of that. So, and by the way, that passes the vertical line test. It's a function. So the graph of an absolute value function, you need to remember, is V-shaped. Now, what we're about to look at, you don't have to draw this again. This is V-shaped. This is X and this is Y. Remember, when you make your X, Y, it starts at 0 because there's nothing in here. And then we went one to the right, and then we went another one to the right. You don't have to do 2 of those, but this number starts at 0. Now, what do you think this is going to do? You're about to see what it's going to do. If you replace the x with x minus 3, it shifts it 3 units. Right. So now your graph is going to start here, and the V shape is going to look like that. Now, what do you think it's going to do if that had been x plus 3? It'd be 3 units to the left. So see, now when you do your XY chart, instead of starting at 0, you're going to start at 3. The opposite of that. So this number, if this is x minus a number, it's going to shift this V shape that many units right. If this is x plus a number, it's going to shift it that many units left. And you will see this when we go to work these. Now, what do you think then this is going to do? Well, there's no number in here, so that's going to start still at 0. But what this is going to do is it's going to shift it, add 5 to all of your y values. So that means this is going to be up 5. So where your parent function normally started right here, it's going to go up 5. So that V shape is going to look just like that. But again, all you need to remember right now is what number to put right here first. That's the main thing you need to remember. Okay. One other thing. if this is a 5 right here? What that's going to do is affect how wide this is. What if it's -5 in front? It's going to affect which way it opens, and you will see that as well. All right, so what we're about to do in this next video is we're going to graph the absolute value function.